The shadow of a vaporized body, a ward full of people trapped in iron lungs, a soldier proudly posing with severed heads. These are disturbing photos historians won't talk about. This photo was taken just after the liberation of France in World War II. The woman in the picture is Simone Toussaint being paraded through the streets of Chartres, France. Her head had been shaved, her clothes were torn, and a mark had been branded on her forehead. She's holding her infant, who is fathered by a German soldier. This was not rare. Scenes like this happened across France during what was called the Wild Purge. Thousands of women were accused and punished for sleeping with the enemy. There were no trials, it was really just mob justice. And in many cases, women weren't even collaborating. Some were just accused. Others worked as like maids for them, or had been victims of SA at the hands of German soldiers. But that didn't matter. Crowds gathered, cheered, and sometimes jeered as these women were marched through towns, sometimes barefoot, bleeding and crying. And this was seen as justice at the time, but it was really more like revenge theater. After the US dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima, the heat blast was so intense it bleached surfaces. Anything that blocked the light, including human bodies, they left a sort of reverse shadow behind. One of the most haunting examples is known as the human shadow etched in stone. It's the outline of a person who'd been sitting on the steps outside the Sumitomo Bank when the bomb went off. The heat instantly vaporized them, leaving behind a scorched imprint of their body on the steps. The image was captured in photographs taken later by Japanese and American teams documenting the aftermath. The stone itself was eventually moved to the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum. People sometimes assume this was a literal burn mark from the body, but it's actually the unbleached area, again, where their body blocked the flash. This photograph shows a hospital ward packed wall to wall with children lying in iron lungs, which were these giant steel machines that kept them alive during the worst of the polio epidemic. In the 40s and 50s, polio was one of the most feared diseases in the world, and it mostly hit young people. It could paralyze muscles, including the diaphragm, meaning you couldn't breathe on your own. So the iron lung worked by creating negative pressure to force your chest to rise and fall. Once you were in, you stayed in. Some patients spent weeks or months inside, others spent their whole lives in one. In the photo, you can see the small round mirrors above the patients' heads, angled so they could look around. That was really their only view of the world. What a complete and utter nightmare, especially if you're claustrophobic. The last man to live in an iron lung was Paul Alexander, who died in 2024. He spent the majority of his life in one, but was actually able to become a lawyer and author, all while confined into this metal tube. In the middle of a civil rights protest at the Manson Motor Lodge in St. Augustine, Florida, a group of black and white activists jumped into the motel's segregated swimming pool to protest. What happened next was caught on camera. James Brock, the motel manager, walked over with this jug of muriatic acid, basically industrial strength cleaner, and he started dumping it into the water while people were still swimming. A photographer captured the exact moment he poured the acid, standing over the pool with his jaw clenched. Some of the swimmers scream in panic, unsure of what's happening. At the same time, a white police officer is in the water dragging one of the protesters out by the neck with a billy club. The photo may look staged to some view, but it wasn't. This really happened, and it was broadcast all over the country. Brock later claimed the acid was just to clean the pool, but yeah, it obviously wasn't the case. The image became one of the most graphic examples of how far some were willing to go to keep things segregated. And no, he wasn't charged. Horatio Gordon Robley was a British soldier. He was also a collector of something most people today would consider pretty horrifying. During his time in New Zealand, he became obsessed with mokomakai, the preserved tattooed heads of Maori people. Originally, these heads had deep cultural and spiritual meaning, but by the late 1800s, they'd become novelty items to trade and collect, especially with European colonials who saw them more as circus sideshow type items rather than sacred objects. So in this photo from 1895, Robley sits proudly in front of dozens of these preserved heads mounted on a wall, like some kind of grotesque art exhibit. Some of the heads had belonged to fallen warriors, some were taken from slaves. And sure, the image is disturbing, being that it's a guy with a pretty morbid hobby, but it It also perfectly encapsulates how colonials viewed indigenous culture. Instead of respect or understanding, these remains were displayed like souvenirs. In 1918, the Russian Revolution was in full swing, and the Bolsheviks had one last loose end to tie up: Romanovs. Tsar Nicholas II, along with his wife Alexandra, family, and a few loyal staff members were all being held at a house that would become the site of one of the most morbid executions in the country's history. Early in the morning, on July 17th, they were taken to the basement and they never came out. It was brutal, to say the least. Some survived the first round of fire thanks to the jewels sewn into their clothes, but they were finished off afterwards with the spikes on the men's bayonets. This photo shows what the room looked like after the bodies were cleared out. Katharina Detzel was locked away in a German psychiatric hospital in the early 1900s. There's not much known about her diagnosis or how she ended up there, but one thing survived: a photo of her standing next to a life-sized figure that she made out of straw and bits of bedding. It's pretty eerie. She reportedly built the straw man as a form of protest. Some accounts say it was meant to represent the Kaiser, and she attacked it out of frustration and rage. Whether that's true or not, the image itself is disturbing even without the context. And it's not just the straw figure, it's what it came out of: isolation, powerlessness, a person making something just to have someone or something to direct their anger at. Alright, well, this has been pretty heavy. Let's talk about McDonald's. A different kind of heavy. Heavy in the bowel region. Are you scared of clowns? Even now, some people find Ronald McDonald kinda off-putting, but the first Ronald McDonald wasn't the bright, bouncy clown we know today. Is Ronald McDonald even around? I actually haven't seen him in a long time. Anyway, he looked like this, the first one. Played by Willard Scott, the original Ronald wore a paper cup for a nose, a tray of food as a hat, and just had a more haphazard, thrown together kind of look in general. Makes him slightly more unsettling in my opinion. There's a photo of him grinning directly into the camera holding a burger, looking more like something an AI would spit out if you typed in nasty fast food clown man. This version of Ronald was part of a local TV promotion in Washington, D.C., and it was thrown together pretty fast, as you can probably tell. Fitting though, for McDonald's, fast is kind of their whole thing. Scott had previously played Bozo the Clown, an equally creepy clown. When McDonald's wanted a similar character, he basically slapped some fast food on his head and improvised. And the result was a mascot that kind of looked like he might offer you fries with one hand and then drag you into the sewer with the other. Anyway, McDonald's rebranded Ronald soon after, giving him a full makeover to be more, acceptable for human society. This is Hamida Djandoubi, a convicted killer on his way to his death. He was the last man to be executed by guillotine in France, 1977. Yes, 77. The same year, audiences were flocking to the theater to watch ships fly around in space. As a farm boy learned to wield a lightsaber and harness the power of the Force, folks in France were watching a man's head get lobbed off in the town square. It wasn't actually quite like that. It was not a public beheading, but still, that is pretty bonkers. This photo shows Robert "Falcon" Scott and his team standing at the South Pole, finally reaching their goal after weeks of brutal conditions. They are clearly worn down, frostbitten, starving, and emotionally wrecked. But the worst part, when they got there, they realized they weren't even the first. The Norwegian team, led by Roald Amundsen, had beaten them by over a month. The disappointment in their faces is unmistakable. It's more than disappointment, really. This was the realization that all the pain, the danger, it had all been for second place. And things only got worse from there. The trek back was hell. Edgar Evans was the first to die, likely from a mix of injuries and exhaustion. Then Lawrence Oates suffered from frostbite, and knowing he was slowing the others down, he just walked off into a blizzard to die on his own terms. Scott, Wilson, and Bowers pushed on, but a storm eventually trapped them inside their tent. For 9 straight days, they were stuck, freezing and starving, just 11 miles from the supply depot that could have saved them. All 3 died in that tent. And with all of that said, I've been your host, James. I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, next time.